We have to get organized. We have to educate, do all this stuff, not because I really think that we're going to be able to stop the inevitable collapse that's coming. I think there's so much momentum in the system. There's such a lack of a structural, organized, institutional resistance to it. The working class has been decimated. Labor unions have been de-radicalized and decimated. Organizations are roughshod and scattered across the country. That I think what's ultimately going to bring this serious cycle, this increasing cycle of crisis and repression to a culmination is going to just have to be a collapse. And in some ways, organizing and educating is more important than ever, not because I personally believe we're going to be able to stop what's coming. I think there is something inevitable baked in, and particularly in the United States, about this overreaching system that's been out over its skis for a long, long fucking time and is going to hit a brick wall. And there's nothing really we can do to stop that. What we're doing is preparing for that and being ready to direct out of the ruins of that collapse. And that collapse is probably going to be multifaceted, but will almost certainly be economic at its core, right? This is an economic system that we have a materialist analysis, this capitalist system in the U.S. in particular, but globally more broadly, is running into a cliff. It's fundamentally unsustainable. It will hit that brick wall. And so I think that's coming. And in fact, another function that this serves is pitting workers against workers, right? The ideology of neoliberalism has always been, hey, you earn just enough money not to be able to get something like Medicaid, right? But you don't make enough money to be able to afford health insurance. Aim your hatred at the poor person who gets Medicaid. Why should they get a handout? Not at the rich asshole who's making billions of dollars, denying you and your family health care and racking up premium charges and making it just inaccessible. So this is another way of doing that. When you can pit the domestic working class against the so-called undocumented illegal workers taking your job, it's a mystification of actual contradictions in our society. And it's another way at which you take the middle, whatever's left of it, or you could just say the domestic working class, and aim their hatred, their gaze downward towards those below them instead of upward. And so this is another way that they do this. And I think there is this connects really well to the AI discussion, because
right.
This is in if I follow my thought, this is a disciplining of the labor force in a lot of ways. And if the idea of the elite is that AI is here, it's going to be super disruptive, it's going to be able to radically transform the labor market, increase profits for business owners as they can cut, costs, labor costs, and onboard AI to do jobs they'd otherwise have to pay salaries or wages for a human being to do, then there is some broader sense in which mass deportations make sense, because there's a certain strata of the labor force that becomes superfluous to a new AI-driven labor market, right? We're already going to have mass unemployment, mass disruptions, incredible chaos. And so if you can go after that lowest, most powerless strata of the labor force, decimate it, destroy it, terrorize it, dismantle it, it makes way for the increasing disruptions in the labor force and the downward pressure that's going to happen to all workers. As that bottom strata is deported, the strata just above it and just above that are going to be pushed down into it by AI. And so I think there is a broader sense in which this overall disciplining of the labor force is, whether it's fully conscious or just a structural output of the system, in some sense clearing the way for what they see AI as being able to bring forward.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very astute observation, right? Which is like, a pretty terrifying thought that is what is happening there. But I do think like the automation is coming. Again, I'm seeing it happen to people that I know now. And you're right, that downward space has to be cleared out for people to fall down there in that kind of system, which obviously should be horrific. I think like the other thing too is that AI is eliminating a lot of jobs that traditionally were kind of petty bourgeois or at least cushy working class jobs. Right? A lot of white collar work can just be automated by AI. And so I think you are going to see a lot of people who are doing pretty well within the United States basically get declassed as a result of that and face downward class movement that is going to be quite destabilizing and horrifying for them. And, those are forces that become declassed that often can become forces of reaction, right? That is a thing that has taken place historically. The petty bourgeoisie, go listen to our episode we just did on Trotsky's text, can be very, very easily manipulated and deployed in these kind of instances of crisis for the ends of fascism. So, we really need to be on guard about that, I think. And again, we really need to be able to push through this idea that like the enemy is some external population or enemy internally population that is the issue, and show people that no, it's the fucking ghouls that run all of these giant AI companies that are going to be the source of your immiseration and the source of your declassing, and make sure that anger is directed in the correct, direction, because that is the entire thing that fascism is trying to avoid. And I think, the thing that we're both getting back to is like the crisis is going to get worse, right? This is all interconnected. Immigration and immigration enforcement is not just some side thing within capitalist society. What we are seeing right now is actually at the core of a broader economic transformation that is taking place, and the various kind of state and ideological maneuverings developing around that, which is why, as always, it's necessary to have a Marxist outlook on the world that can tie these things together and help us understand how they are part of a unified struggle.
Absolutely.